And let's everybody. What do you think about this last panel? I think we can collect quite interesting ideas and quite fresh and new. And at the moment, there is these days exactly, just also finishing today is happening, the first ever new European Bauhaus conference in Brussels and in other places, just like right now. So we could have been nearly a part of it. But because we are not, let's be a little bit more visionary than them. So, and again, because, and also, yeah, let's see what the questions I collected.
Do you hold this?
I go? Okay.
So. I want you to just sit here in the audience. So people talk, you are very much the audience mic.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, that's cool.
Daniel, come here, sit. Because they will have a microphone to get, close. Yeah, and so you can sit, so I can.
Okay.
We can
That
have
makes
our
sense.
microphone in the middle, so you can talk. Okay. Anybody? Anything to say or ask to start?
Bring up those questions which were
I had one question. I think you mentioned briefly in your presentation that you also send human brainwaves into space.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I would be a bit scared. I mean, the whole cockroach movement's okay, if an alien race might come across, that is okay. But now you're sending like our consciousness, basically. Did you ever think maybe I shouldn't?
I get these questions all the time. It's very simple. So the possible risk is when you target an object, and if you transmit with the direction and you keep the direction during the transmission, it means that this transmission goes to a specific object in the sky. But when you keep the antenna still, which is what I normally do, essentially the radio waves are just going to be spread across the space. So they don't target anything. So what happens is just these signals continues to travel into space in a scattered way. So it's not, it's just going to fade into the cosmic noise. So it's not going to be detected as a signal. So this is a very, very different form of transmission. So essentially, we already transmit, the most dangerous form of transmissions are like the connection with the space probes, because those are like communication in deep space. They use very strong antennas to communicate with the space probe. So those are the strongest signals we send into space. But other than that, everything else is already like the space is filled with the radio transmissions. So it's not something that is going to stand out to a potential extraterrestrial civilization. And it's more like the concept. Of course, if you want to see it like that, you send into space also something which is very much part of a human experience. So they will be able to understand how we think, for example, but the way the signal will travel, that is simply not possible. So don't worry about that.
So it's conceptual.
No, but I'm very aware of this because I'm a part of the SETI committee, so we talk about this all the time. And so I'm very, very aware of this potential, they call it existential risk, is the potential risk of being attacked by an extraterrestrial civilization. And yeah.
Okay, and here we come to your question. So it was about ethical approach, what we think.
Yeah, well,
insect, non-human, but also human.
Seems like the further we go from the human experience, the more these ethical questions become very unclear. So it seems to be we're becoming more aware of the potential pain and suffering in mammals, other mammals, but we seem to be still completely oblivious about the experience of life of species that are very different from us, simply because we just have no understanding of what is it like to be a mushroom, or like a cockroach, or
can I say something about this?
Yeah.
So it's, I think it's really interesting to notice how, as you said, like neuroscientists do this all the time, and they experience nothing. It's just normal. And as you asked, what would you do if a species from the outer space would come? Would you not dissect it? Of course, if you think about like what normality is and what is your normality, then you don't, like, you switch off your empathy and you notice nothing. But when something appears, like when you put, for example, like this problem to biologists and they don't know how to react because it's not like their normality, then the empathy is not switched off. So I've been actually reflecting a lot about this way of not seeing things. Like, for example, when you buy your meat in the supermarket and it's like packed in a way that loses every connection with the animal, like that there is actually a life that you're actually eating that was dead and was dead in a certain way, like through mass production, like without having even a life and so on. Like how we as humans are anesthetized. Like how is it possible that a whole generation is blind and doesn't see or refuses to see what is actually happening, and how this empathy on and off switch works? And I think this is something we need to reflect on in this society, especially with this way of abstracting ourselves from what we do.
Yeah, it's true. It's like this scientist I spoke with, he really thinks of this procedure as a very mechanical procedure. It doesn't really even remotely think about the insect as some kind of living species. But also I was speaking with someone who is an animal studies expert in the Netherlands. And he says that occasionally he's sent to slaughterhouses to check if they follow the standards, etc., etc. And when he interviews people who are on the line on the chain of actually killing and cutting the animals, no one takes responsibility for the actual killing. So they say, no, it's not me, it's the one before me. And the one before him is like, or her, no, it's not me, it's just before me or whatever. So it's completely, there is removal of responsibility. I think it's very interesting.
I think also the fear of being invaded has to do with some kind of human karma. We know that like Western culture, goes and invades and takes and colonizes, but why do we assume that other living organisms has to do the same? No, I mean, it's probably also it's a projection as well. No, it's a fear that comes from something that already happened and happens in human life.
But I have an observation that humans tend to pretend that they are a lot nicer than they actually are. And that we convince ourselves that we are recycling more than we are, that we make more conscious decisions than we actually do. And I've also seen people just lying to me that they are recycling, but I see that they are not.
Wow,
because it is this image that we are trying to create, that we are kind of living better than we actually do. And I like this study about like questioning who does more housework in couples, and it comes together as 130%. Because the other person thinks that they do more housework than the other one. So we are trying to pretend that we are better than we actually are. But I don't know how this relates to ethics. I think we as humans do tend to pretend more ethical and more thinking about others than we actually do. Because most humans do not have any trouble killing an insect or even killing a chicken on a farm. And just recently we were living and killing our own food because of normal. That was normal.
Well, it is normal. I mean, like living means killing 1,000 or rather. Like at first the microbes, then like
we kill billions every time we wash a dirty cloth.
Definitely, but the thing is like how did we move in a point that we're like changing the composition of the planet? How did this happen? Because killing is normal, but killing in a mass production chain is something different, something really, really, really different.
I have another comment about cockroaches. I have 5 cockroaches at home. You know, I don't. Why do they have names? No, they don't have names, but I can recognize them because they look. Well, there's a story because of the aquaponics in the nature house. In the nature house, they have cockroaches, so I will once in a while bring cockroaches home. And in the nature
by
house,
accident, that's
by
important.
accident, they will just hide in my plants, and when they are home, I will just put them in a special kind of little tray. I don't want to bring them back because I think in the nature house they are being mistreated. So these are my rescues.
But don't they populate?
Well, not yet. And I have like the biggest ones. Of the 2 cockroaches, I will just give them food, and one of them hides, while the other one kind of eats from hand. And it's such a strange thing that if you empathize, you can see character even in your little cockroaches.
Yeah, but then you can also, there's always this trap of emotion that we project human emotions onto others.
Yes, and I think that the same goes with when my mother talks to her tomato plants, and she says this is like a slow tomato plant. He doesn't like this, doesn't like that. This is a nice tomato plant. Look at it, it's so tall. And so when we think about it, I think we convinced to see the emotions in other creatures.
I'm wondering, Daniel, so if you are like those scientists you work together with, so do they have some more kind of novel methods of research rather than just taking apart everything and because that's kind of very traditional. So if you go back in the history of science, so with all kind of frogs and everything and mice, so that's very traditional method of doing kind of research. Are there any other more modern methods?
Yeah, like for example, movements in the grass, movements in the environment or ecosystem.
Yeah, no, I don't know because they only told me about this research, so I don't know exactly how many types of research they do. But probably it's not so much about the procedure, the way they cut, or it's more about the fact that the instruments are becoming more and more sophisticated. It's like if you think about EEG recording for humans 30 years ago, they were much more rudimental. So in a way, you still do the same recording, but the instruments are so much more sophisticated that you can get a lot more data than 30 years ago. And I think that is a big difference. So I don't know if they do anything else, but seems like I think I remember. I'm not sure that I remember vaguely asking if they can take any brain activity from the head, this neuropil, what they call it, and I don't think they can. So maybe it's too small, or so that they focus on the neurosystem across the body.
What else? What questions?
Yeah, just about these instruments. yeah, they become more sophisticated, and this is quite recent. I'd say, I think more than like 10, 15 years, kind of. Especially, they still keep developing. Yeah, I think maybe artists need to demand access to them, because how else we can, and also how because this we can have tomorrow also. We can prepare some questions also to the scientists, how they imagine actually that their knowledge is also transformed, so that all these new sophisticated instruments that they make things, I don't know, more sensible, more accessible, more visible, more audible. So, okay, so this is one thing. So let me see what are the other questions. Yeah, but there are instruments. I see that there are also instruments a little bit for who are modern instruments, how to measure the wind and make the picture of the weather and to think about the wind. So that's all, again, instrument question. Yeah, and
I think there was a question about new ways of sensing.
Yeah,
I really like that's the same as asking someone to imagine a new color.
yeah.
new.
We are just so limited by who we are, and if I would want a new sense, I think I would like to sense weather changes, to know if it's going to be a dry summer or not.
On a large scale.
Yeah.
Like not as thunder coming, but more like, oh, there will be a harsh winter in 3 months.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Because Latvians used to have these traditions, like you have a special date, and if it rains on that date, you know it's going to be harsh winter or early winter.
Oh, yeah. Can you elaborate? How do you know this?
Well, there you have to wait for that date, and then depending on the weather on that date,
Yes. You predict what will be happening in a month.
Yeah, but the question is, do we need a specific technology to sense more, or are we our own technology? I mean, can we change our way of being aware of things and amplify certain things and reach a new understanding?
And who has access, of course, to the amplification gadgets? Is it only military, or is it humans in need?
and people who go in sea, they can read very well pressure, so they can predict the weather for the weekend using the air pressure. So that is something that is knowledge that is accessible to us.
Trained.
Yeah, we just don't know how to use it.
Popular knowledge now. For example, the swallow birds, if they're flying low, you know that it will be rain.
Yeah.
Or
And
these
once
seasonal
when you
birds.
see flies flying low, also that's a
Color of the sunset also.
I guess, yeah, just what I want to say is that perhaps the sense of technology doesn't have to go again into this centralized or powerful cores, of the military, the government, so on. But maybe it's interesting to see technology in other mediums, in the nature or in the animals.
Yeah, technology is a skill.
It's a skill.
The original meaning of the word, like to learn how to do something in a certain way.
Yeah, acknowledge now so that the humans, we don't see or we don't sense everything, or we cannot. We have a very limited reach. But
or maybe just to understand the perspective, like to gain scope of the perspective of a non-human. But I always struggle with this notion of how can you make something be of the perspective of non-human if anything that you do is viewed from a human lens. And how can you shed that?
It's just
it's impossible.
every single time I would try something to think about it, end up to a wall and be like, no, that's still. I'm still.
Any idea which comes in our mind, it's still.
My mind is so limited. I can't even.
This was a research in Norway that they put on moose, they put cameras by their heads, so you can see the world from the perspective of moose. So you can understand a bit more about how
A moose?
a moose.
Oh,
yeah.
But then they have eyes on both sides, so you still can't
No, but you can
And they
experience.
turn the head to see.
Yeah.
So you see what the moves.
You can experience something. Maybe
Yeah, but you
different.
couldn't understand how it is to see something with peripheral
You can simulate,
vision,
maybe.
No.
where like you
No.
have
That's all kind of
Like
It's
if
a
you want to
different-
see it, so you still have to focus. Like,
Oh yeah,
the way you
right.
are
So
focused.
we cannot focus.
There's kind of also disembedding the sense, no? Because it's not only the eyes, but it's also the brain and the rest of the senses, how they work together to create the
and also like color
idea.
and like what did they theorize that like plants, like if they would see color they would see red, or like I mean that's just like, but it's also like when you apply these like kind of translations, what is the formulas that you go by, and are those formulas also biased? And then it's just difficult.
But I think, this book, how we could get the access to a super advanced and sophisticated and new technologies, because these days they are so amazing. Yeah, so but they are used, like also this, like all this robotics or this neural movement recordings, or I don't know, like these satellites, or drone slider scannings, and then different spectrum scans also of the Earth's surface. I think they are definitely interesting. So just what is the purpose? This is one thing. The other, what I would like to say, that why technologies is important, just how we could use, I think, is because just becoming for us more sensitive. Actually, have you ever thought about it, what that would mean? That would mean that you cannot live in a society, that there are these cases where people are too sensitive to Wi-Fi or electromagnetic, they have to live in the forests. They are too sensitive to all those little chemical pollutions from in the air, so that they cannot live. They just, this means sensitivity. And this hypersensitivity, it's also, it's a thing, and also it's not precise, and you cannot control. And if you would feel that you will have extreme headaches if they're coming bad weather, but people have the migraines or so, like coming from the big storms or something. So this means sensitivity. You will suffer, and it's very imprecise, because sometimes you have a couple of days before, and sometimes you have that day this bad feeling. And that's why also these predictions of this Latvian weather is very nice, because they are super. You have a whole open spectrum actually of interpretation, because they are so nicely imprecise. But you keep observing the nature. That's more important. You keep observing the weather today, the sun, or the level of sun, or when the birds leave for south. All these dates, and then they kind of you try to decode. But what does it mean?
Create the patterns, no?
A little bit to live in these patterns. So this was this knowledge. But Bruno Tour also was asking actually about are there pitch mediums, or are there any technologies which can help us to become more sensitive? But of course, not only technology helps this. Because we can disconnect easily, So I buy meat, I eat meat. Okay, for me, I haven't seen this chicken.
I mean, even in English, think about like beef, cow. Like this is linguistically separated notions. Like once the cow becomes beef. Like cow is no cow anymore. This is beef.
Yeah.
So linguistically, you've been
Also in Latvian, we don't say that we eat cow.
No.
No. We eat. True. And this is a survival, I think. We need to survive, so we disconnect.
Yeah, but do we need to do whatever we do to survive, like put the animals into this industrialized process?
But now we have
No, that can change definitely.
I think so.
All kind of our food we eat, so I think that absolutely can change pretty kind of drastically. I think so.
But we have a problem with obesity. So obviously we eat too much. So even if we just make people stop eating so much, we could at least remove most of the cows that we are keeping in captivity just by reducing the obesity.
Oh, there was one interesting presentation by Laura Beloff about ticks. That recently they have more and more this kind of bacteria which makes you allergic to beef. The tick bites and makes people allergic to beef. And that kind of it would solve. It was like planet is solving the problem, kind of. So.
Yeah, cool.
Mastermind horror film where Mastermind has like makes sense. It's really
from all this research and like small animal mechanics, we are entering this kind of this way of the swarm mechanics of the World Organization. Also, like ticks solving beef problem. Drones being led by moth smelling sensors. Just also very interesting research of researchers mistreating bugs. Was these researchers in America, they attach these smell sensory antennas of moths to lead drones by smell. And it is currently quite successful. They haven't yet found solution how to replicate technically these antennas. So they use living moth antennas, and then they can be used for 8 hours. Then they just die. They cannot sustain it, and then they replace them. Yes, for moths, for drones to be led by smell, because sometimes it could be, there's like dries, without lights, kind of obstacles. You need some other kind of leading ways, navigational ways.
Biochemically reactive driven.
I was following a kind of a think tank of a couple weeks where people were invited to propose how we can reduce obesity in Europe. And they came up with apps and different plans and policies. And I really did enjoy these phone apps that would help you to stop being obese. Well, nowhere did it appear a suggestion to eat less. And I really enjoy this, that we as humans, we try to find clever technical solutions how to solve problems.
Anything.
It's hard to give up.
Yeah, and then there was Aurora's question about how we can think about contaminating spaces.
New ways of imagining contaminating spaces and our relationship with them. Yeah, if you think of radioactive contamination, for example, it's like now in Finland, there is this Onkalo space that is being built, which will be the first space in the world where nucleus cores are going to be stored. And scientists are analyzing the soil of the place and the animals and all the environment because of a future leak that will happen in around 10,000 years from now. So we're giving a big problem to the deep future to inherit from us. And like radioactive contamination is something that doesn't go away probably in the history of humanity. And there is this discussion of like what happens if civilization is interrupted and then we cannot communicate information into the future. Like what happens if we cannot like send a warning signal to the future humans unaware of what's hidden there.
It's a question of like being brought up in architecture quite a bit because it's like architecturally speaking, like how do you make a space that then people would then communicate people not to go there, not to touch it, even when potentially language has disappeared. And it's quite a lot of answers, but a lot of co-answers, because, for instance, someone suggested making these like really spiky, scary spaces, but then in the sense like that is interesting, that is essentially what would attract people the most, like the way we think now, and like the drawings that they made with communicating how, like, what kind of, like, if you couldn't write a sign, don't go in there, if you could just draw a cartoon, that they would like do it from top to down, because they thought, oh, actually, there's like some languages you read from both sides, so you can't do a line of drawings, you have to go down, and then it's just these symbols, and yeah, it's quite.
Like
It
religion,
really
for
looks-
example, could be
yeah.
a way of transmitting a message.
Yeah.
It has been already researched.
Yeah, because it's something that kind of is spoken knowledge that can
Yeah, the
transmit
idea
through.
of sacred and fear.
Yeah.
There's this deep time clock. What's it called? The long now. But it's a kind of tower structure that is supposed to last for the next roughly 100,000 years or 500,000 years, and they're thinking how the mechanical also system will wear off over centuries, and how other kind of systems can start like dealing with wearing off, I don't know, different sensors and so on. The guy of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, is of course supporting that kind of crazy projects over time, but yeah, it's for sure like thinking. There was this also other project that they sent to space this disk, no, with materials of how are humans, no?
Voyagers.
The Voyagers.
Yeah, the Voyagers.
Oh, they are far away.
Yeah, so that's
yeah.
Beyond
Sent, I think in the 60s they launched them, or
70s.
in 70s.
Beyond our
And
planet's
then
borders
they
already.
made available online all the content.
Oh,
they
yeah,
sent
that's
there,
cool.
So it was very kind of, the content was
All
very
pictures,
real. One of
audio
our friends,
recordings,
artists,
they
he
were-
collected all those pictures and sounds and writings, so it was quite funny. So, but yeah, I think there's still a website somewhere online from that project.
Oh.
Carl Sagan was a scientist, American scientist, who made that. In 1977, they launched on the Voyager 1 and 2. So, but the initiative was by a scientist called Carl Sagan. But the project has been really criticized over the years because he was representing humans from a very very, very positive perspective. So,
Oh, we are very nice. Come,
Yeah.
come.
very good.
You're welcome. This planet it just cannot solve itself. I think also this time scale again is one of the questions. The feedback loop is, or how actually far we can understand, or how far we can think, or how much time we should actually think of, like you say. This nuclear waste, it just doesn't go away, but you are making artwork for 450 years with the forest. So how all this is gonna happen again? So people try to do something, but what if something is happening? I don't know. Can CO2 leak? Just an idea. But imagine. So there are these projects new in Iceland. So that they are taking CO2, pumping out from the air and storing and really and storing it into the ground. And I'm just thinking, but what if CO2 can leak one day because it's stored there? I don't know, maybe in 500 years something's happening.
I think it's hard.
Yeah, they make it hard.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but when the trees die, they are releasing all CO2 back into the air sooner. If you burn them immediately, if you don't burn, it still releases all CO2 which it has consumed. It releases back. So these ecosystems are much more complex, and how far actually we can think about them, and there's not enough research yet, that's for sure, that scientists they say themselves about the ecosystematic, all these relations, so yeah. And also I remember Icelandic scientists, they were complaining that nobody is thinking more of the energy, in terms of energy also production, more than even not 30 years, they think just about 10 years. But how far actually we can imagine, well, that's probably could be the question to these astronomers, because they have quite imaginative mind, based in all formulas, so they are quite good in understanding, I think, big scale of also time. Maybe we can talk about it.
Who was saying about this space effect yesterday? That astronauts in space get a better understanding of the interconnections of the planet.
We were talking about
we were talking
the
about this.
overview effect.
Overview.
Yeah,
but that's a bit dangerous, because what Jeff Bezos say in COP26, that when he flew out, he saw the space, but then inside of me, you're thinking, so how much CO2 did you spend just to see this, have this emotional connection?
It can raise wrong ideas also of expansionism. And next planet, please.
Yeah. How much this war is producing CO2 and all the other stuff? Quite a bit. And all contamination, of all grounds, say.
And
Just
how much
cannot imagine.
CO2 will have to be reproduced to then recreate these infrastructures
Back, yeah.
destroyed.
Yeah, that's for sure is quite a big disaster, just in terms of ecology. Okay, I think we are done. We are 1 minute too, and tomorrow we meet with Yuri Žagars, and he is quite an interesting scientist. He himself, I think, has been really much also interested in previous times. Haven't heard anything about it and this extraterrestrial life as well. But yeah, I'm not sure what's new in this field. We can ask maybe him also some questions about that. And think about what you would like maybe to do tomorrow, so we can also have a dinner and talk a little bit, because the plan was that we meet with him, we talk, so we just get a bit better understanding of this place and what they do there, about this scientist particularly, and then we can have also free time to walk around. Maybe there will be some more scientists showing up, so we can ask them some questions.
Why
This
do you
is in
think?
Latvian, but this is book by him. It's called Theory of Orbits. It's full of formulas. You kind of don't understand
There's in there one here as well.
That's the newer one.
It's from the same telescope? Or?
Outer.
Global navigation.
There's some text in Latvian, but actually the formulas are
hardcore.
But as you were saying, 20 years ago, they were not really in favor of artists so much.
They
now
were really confused. So there's this very interesting relations, because we were kind of appreciating, scientists, they are smart. We artists don't know even what to ask them. So I remember this first time, and they were opposite. They were very, very worried that they will not provide precise data. So they were saying, okay, we were scanning today's sun, but I'm not sure if it is a scan or white noise. If it's really sun signal from the sun or white noise. What if we give you wrong data? Oh my God! For our musicians was completely just any noise is good.
If anything, don't tell us that it was white or white noise.
Yeah.
I don't want to know.
So we kind of didn't know, how to. What is language and how to talk, because scientists, I also realized now working with different other scientists together, so that it's difficult to find this common language, because either they are very too general, and then they are really too general, you nearly know these, or they are too specific immediately. And if it's not right things you wanted to know, then you cannot talk about this.
Yes. So I could just
Yeah, but just take a look. So, because this scientist, he is also lecturer. He's retired from a job in Latvia, but he still goes once a month to France. He's teaching also astronomy in a university, and he just was giving this book complaining that young people don't want to study all these formulas. Especially in Latvia. He said in France, still they are quite interested, but not in Latvia. So how you can make these connections from these formulas? Well, you did it nicely. This coding, decoding. Yeah, so what you can do is the formulas. But there are some good ideas.
Sometimes it's just good to make the right or naive questions from the art perspective and figure out what the scientist missed to ask. You know, we get this from Laura also often.
Yeah.
When we just need to lose the shyness of our discipline and try to ask. No, because I think we also have a sensitivity or some ideas that are also very particular. No? So why not?
So how did you say? Just ask questions?
Yeah, make the naive, stupid questions are from the art perspective.
Don't be ashamed of being a complete idiot in front of them.
Don't be ashamed.
Because they think we don't know anything. Anyway, I think we don't know much.
I had a conversation with a scientist who was a bit afraid and not the one in Helsinki, another one. Said, "Oh, I'm not used to talking with this kind of group of people, artists. Like, I don't know what to say. Like,
This kind of group.
I don't know. It was like, okay, am I not human or what?"
They are more than human group. So, yeah. Please think about some questions interesting that we could ask.
Not stupid.
So that you can